Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, your home for heavy strategy, awesome theme, and everything in between. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 140, Top 10 Fantasy Adventure Games with the Solomode Sadlers. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. We are joined by two friends who have been on the podcast a number of times. They're back. Only they are here to present their glorious new project that will be hitting Kickstarter in a couple of days. But we're going to do it in a very, very fun way. I'll explain that in a minute, but I want to get to this first. Let us bring back Adam and Brady Sadler to the show. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us back.
And because we could not contain the fury of Indiana in two mere mortals, we had to invite on a third gentleman who is here by his own admission just for the eye candy. It is the man who runs Solomode Games, also a sporadically bored podcast. It is Mike Dilisio. Welcome to the show for the first time officially.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. It's an honor. And, we're representing Indiana pretty hard, I think, right now.
You guys are representing Indiana pretty hard. I mean, I have love for Indiana. I went to school in Indiana and everything, but
Did you go to school here?
I went to Notre Dame, yeah.
Ah, I was not aware of that. Okay, all right.
Brady is over here posting out about Mr. Buttigieg over there.
Buttigieg, yeah.
I'm not going to make this a political podcast, but it's like, but to me, it's like, oh, South Bend, oh, this is
sure. Well, it's not IU, but Notre Dame will have to do. That's okay.
Wait, what are we having intra-squad rivalry over here already?
No, because you didn't say Purdue. I mean,
okay,
I can.
That's where Brady and I went. Yeah. So we got all the ground covered.
I didn't know that you guys were Purdue guys. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not like really that attached to my college, so it's okay.
Okay, good.
No school spirit over here.
Right, I'll save the bad IU versus Purdue jokes because I do have a few.
You barely went, and wow, we are in the weeds already, so we're gonna have a good old time. So we're gonna accomplish a couple of things over here. The most important thing we're going to accomplish is I wanted to present the Kickstarter in a certain way because it comes from a long lineage of fantasy games, and I assume that Alter Quest is kind of like in its own way, kind of calling back to these fantasy games that you know and love. So we just like, you know what? I'm gonna go. Why not? We're gonna go whole hog. We're gonna go top 10 fantasy tabletop adventures. These are the games that inspired the Sadlers to do what they do, to make the game that they made. And then after that, in a separate episode in a couple of days, you'll hear more about Alter Quest in particular. But I'm really excited to get into fantasy games with these gentlemen over here. And Mike, you're just kind of around.
I'm around. I am absolutely an imposter.
He was our first playtester, though, so he's playing a crucial role in the development of Alter Quest. So. Yes, he saw it from the early days.
Yeah, and when we were doing these lists, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I kind of felt like, honestly, a little bit of an imposter because I'm not really a fantasy guy, but Alter Quest, I think it may change my mind, honestly. It may get me there.
That's the goal.
We do not know what will be number one on the list. These guys had their druthers. But we are going to have a lot of fun getting there. We're going to present top 10 fantasy tabletop adventures. I say that in particular because it's not just board gaming. We're going into the RPG space and the wargaming space because there's a lot of things that have influenced the different people that are on this call. So the way I did it was I asked all these gentlemen for their top 10 lists. And we smushed them all together, and I've made one list, 10 games. These 10 games appeared at least twice on people's list. So there was a couple of games that kind of, only one person mentioned, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But these 10 games, I'm looking at the list, it's like, wow, we did a pretty good job, except for a couple of glaring exceptions that we're going to get to in a little bit.
I'll be ready to defend those.
That was Brady Sadler, who is ready. As a matter of fact, that is the other reason why I wanted you on the show. Number one, Alter Quest, and number two, your defense of ... All right, I'm going to get to Mr. Mike Dilisio first. Funny because you put your top 10 and before you posted, you were like, oh, I apologize for this. This is going to be a little weird. 7 of your games did not make the big list. That's a lot.
That's not a shock at all. That is not a surprise at all. I'm telling you, I'm the outsider in this. I usually don't play a lot of fantasy games, and I think that my definition of fantasy is much wider maybe than a lot of people would be.
I did want to comment on a couple of games. So you put on the City of Kings. That was your second game. That City of Kings is a big sprawling adventure game. We've covered that on the show a couple of times. Root, which I don't know. Have you guys played Root? Adam and Brady?
Yes. I did, yeah, and I would consider that fantasy, and it actually might have climbed up my list, but I just don't get a lot of plays in of it because I'm not a huge fan of the solo co-op aspects of it, and I don't have a group that really plays it constantly, just competitively. So, but I do like it, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those games that like it's amazing as a multiplayer, and then the co-op is there.
Yeah. No, if we were counting it as a co-op or solo game, it wouldn't be in my top 100.
Right.
But as a multiplayer game. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, I salute that one on your list, Mike. I think it belongs there.
I appreciate it.
A big love fest over here. Oh, we'll get to the not love fest part in just a minute.
I was going to say, Mike, I'm glad you enjoy it.
Someone's got to.
A little bit further down the list, we have Arcadia Quest, Lords of Hellas, Tiny Epic Quest, which I'm going to put a pin in that. We are going to get to Tiny Epic in a little bit.
Oh, we'll get back to it. You better believe it.
Quests of Valyria and Dragoon. So I wanted to actually ask all you guys about Quest of Valyria. So Quest of Valyria, I love it. It's a kind of a little card game. It's the card game version of Lords of Waterdeep. I wanted to ask you guys, why not just put Lords of Waterdeep on there? Do you guys like that game?
I've only played that like once, I think, and I thought it was neat, but it just wasn't something that stuck around for me. Mm-hmm. But I did see the appeal, and anybody who likes those type of games, yeah, I think that would belong up there. I think if it was between those two, I would probably choose Lords of Waterdeep because I've played both of them. And while I like Valyria, I like how quick it is and everything, I think I like the depth more of Lords of Waterdeep.
What about you, Mike? You had no Lords of Waterdeep for you?
No. I've played many games of Lords of Waterdeep. That's a game that I've played with my wife. I've played with one of the earlier game groups that I don't even get to play with much anymore. I would agree if you're adding in the expansion that I would prefer it. But to me, Quest of Valyria gives you almost the same experience as base Waterdeep with half the time and just cards. And so I kind of feel like you're getting the same experience a little bit more quickly. But I'm down with Waterdeep. I have no ill will towards it at all.
I mentioned this on a show a couple of episodes ago, but that was the game that got me into modern gaming. So I could never talk. I was a big D&D guy back in the day, so I needed like that to get me into board gaming. I'm like, what's this?
The funny thing is, I'm not even a huge D&D guy, but I like the D&D board games. I think I'm maybe the only person that likes Assault of the Giants. I like, I like the only person, Tyrants of the Underdark. I like the D&D board games because I think that it opens up a whole new, doorway for people that maybe are tangentially related to the hobby and can get an idea of what these games are about.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get to Adam next. 4 games missed the list, which is not surprising.
Only 4?
You guys are twins, so you have a lot of the same games.
That's true, yes.
So I can sum up the games that missed your list in one word: Warhammer.
I bet. Or Games Workshop.
Games Workshop. So we had Warhammer Quest, Age of Sigmar, Mordheim. What is going on here?
Did you even play Mordheim, Adam?
Oh yeah, a few times, but it was more about the inspiration of it. Like a lot of Games Workshop, kind of got me into the hobby in general, like Warhammer. I put Age of Sigmar in there just because it's the modern version of their war game. Yeah. But me and Brady got into Warhammer Fantasy Battles back when we were 15 or 16. That's kind of opened the door to hobby gaming for us, and so it's always had a special place in my heart. And I still collect Warhammer models and paint miniatures and play a lot of war games. So they are huge.
Spends a lot of money. I think you own a percentage of Games Workshop stock just for what you spent on them.
I definitely regret not buying stock of them. Stock's been going crazy these last few years. But yeah, Mordheim was really cool in particular because it kind of took the skirmish wargaming model and kind of mixed in some RPG elements. So you could have these little war band you take into the city of Mordheim to fight over Warpstone and build up your guys who survive the battle, get new skills, and level up. A very narrative-driven skirmish game.
And then the last one, I actually really commend you putting this one on, Blood Bowl. So Blood Bowl is so fun. It's such a mess, but it's so good.
It's really fun. I really enjoy it, but I was also very impressed with Blitz Bowl. It came out recently, only in Barnes & Noble. It's like a really short version of Blood Bowl, but even Brady, I got him to play with me. Even he enjoyed it.
It's a good game, yeah. Honestly, if this list was made a couple weeks from now, whenever the Halflings come out, this might be on my list too, because they're making a Halfling team finally after how long has it been since they've had a Halfling team? It's been like
the 90s when.
I might have to have a little bit of a callback when Blood Bowl comes out, so we can just geek out. This big mess of a game. It's like a subculture thing, but it's so awesome. It's so much fun. Brady, let's get to you. Speaking of your list, so you had a couple of games. There was one game on the bottom that just made the cut. It beat out a couple of pretty big, massive games. Legends Untold. Well, I've actually we're about to review that, but I'm not that familiar. But what did you like about that game?
So it's a game. It's interesting because there's nothing spectacular about the game design itself. First off, the production's great, the art's great, the immersion's great. It's a cool product. I kickstarted it, and I wasn't expecting much when I got it, but my daughter, who's 7, we were playing it, and she got really into it. But it kind of simulates really old school like adventure books and like D&D, and it's mostly geared toward just pure exploration, like revealing cards and declaring your marching order. But the whole game is just rolling 3d6 and adding modifiers, typical like adventure book stuff. So there's not a whole lot of depth there, but we just played it a lot. It's like I realized when making this list, I've probably played it more than most fantasy games I own recently. So I felt like I had to put it up there just to give it a kind of a tip of the hat because I really appreciate it.
Speaking of old school, you have Runebound second edition. You didn't dip into the third one?
Third one's cool, yeah. I didn't have any big problems with the third one, but I played second edition a lot. Like when I first started dating my wife, that was the first game we played together. And before I even met her, I played it a ton. I had like all the expansions and everything. And that Descent: Journeys in the Dark was what got me back into like really hardcore board gaming. But then Runebound was the one that kind of took it to another level, and I started just like acquiring expansions and just playing solo and stuff like that. So that game was kind of just up there for pure kind of nostalgia. Like it kind of belongs up there since the impact it had on me.
And speaking of a game that belongs up in the top 10 list, which somehow missed the list, this is Brady's number 1 game of all time. None of the rest of us put us on the list. It was Lord of the Rings living card game.
That one got cut from my list.
I played it for the first time with Brady. How long ago? Like not even a month ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time I had played it. I can see why Brady loves it because I can, I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds here, but I can kind of even see a little bit of inspiration for your card system from that type of a card system. So I can understand between that and the IP why it appeals to you.
Yeah, that had the biggest influence, the biggest impact on me from a design standpoint more than any other product out there. And people will probably see that. Like, I mean, playing Warhammer Quest or Heroes of Terranov, you can see little vestiges of Lord of the Rings LCG in there because that game, it was totally new territory for me when I first started playtesting at FFG when Nate was designing it. Because it was like, oh my god, a co-op LCG, how do you do this? And I was just fascinated by it. I mean, I still buy the expansions. I don't play it as much as I used to, but it's one of those things where it probably is the most influential game on the market for me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for a lot of people, like they may like it or hate it, but Arkham Horror LCG just kind of like the Bad Year Blimp just kind of came in and okay, this is really how you do it, guys.
It did improve quite a bit, yeah. And I play Arkham as well. I think the only thing that I appreciate more with the Lord of the Rings, besides the difference in theme, is I kind of prefer the non-campaign, not committing to a big sprawling, campaign, which is it's great. People love it, and it's doing well for a reason. But I just love that kind of one-off nature, playing these puzzly quests and not having to do all the bookkeeping between,
All right, so let's get to the game. I performed only a little bit worse than Mike over here. 6 of the games missed my list, or missed the big list. So I put Munchkin, which had no chance of making anybody's list. Like you guys have some nostalgia picks. That's my nostalgia pick.
That's fair. That's fair.
I played a lot of Munchkin. I played plenty of Munchkin in my time.
And it's not on your list, so there's something wrong with
It
you.
is not on my list because I haven't played it in a long time.
A couple of the more modern games, Sword and Sorcery, Clank, which counts for me. I enjoy that one. Shadow Rift was someone I recently discovered, which is like a deck builder. Nobody put Aeon's End. Are you guys Aeon's End fans?
I have no issues with. I think it's a cool design, and I owned all of the products. I just traded it away recently, but it's the setup is kind of an issue for me. Like there's and this is most with deck builders in general. It's not saying Aeon's is problematic, but it didn't player scale as well as I'd like, and there's little tiny things, but altogether it's a great system, great product.
The few times we played it, I mean, I enjoyed it. But yeah, no, they didn't really stand out to me as like a big one for me.
But you mentioned Shadow Rift, and I have that. I'm looking at the box right now, actually, because I listened to you mention it on a recent podcast, and that's one I really want to get back into. I played it once, and it's neat. I just felt like I missed a few things or something, but I kind of want to get back into that one because it's a great production. The new edition looks great, and I have all the Kickstarter stuff, so that one I'd love to try again.
Oh, it's one of those games where so Aeon's End is amazing because it's so kind of smooth, like it's very mechanically, just buttery smooth. But when it's that smooth, the theme just gets lost. It's almost like a game has to be kind of sloppy a little bit to get that theme in there. So we
and you mentioned theme too. I think that was a big part of Aeon's End for me because I'm kind of superficial with theme a lot of the time, and that one I don't want to all be mages. I'd like to be like, okay, you be a warrior, you be a priest or whatever, but everyone's a mage, and I'm just like, that theme kind of just dissipates for me a little bit,
Right, exactly. Okay,
yeah, that one didn't immerse me at all. Sorry to say.
Aeon's End did not immerse you?
No, it really didn't.
No, there's no immersion there. But like Shadow Rift, the town deck is amazing. I think as sloppy as it is,
I've never played that.
It's great.
We should try it sometime. Like I've been trying to get back into it, so we'll try it sometime.
I'll give it a shot.
All right. So speaking of 2 games that a lot of people are giving a shot, but you guys have left off the list. These are the games were number 3 and number 2 on my personal list. Guys, defend your exclusion of Gloomhaven. Oh my goodness.
Now, Gloomhaven is an amazing system. I always tell people this, there's nothing I would criticize about it. It's not something I ever really break out, and it's nothing to do with the mechanics. It's just I don't know what it is exactly that really doesn't draw me into wanting to break all that stuff out and play it. It just doesn't get as much play as the games on my list that I list. And that's usually how I make my list, is what I play the most or what has the biggest influence on me. And Gloomhaven didn't influence me a ton from the design standpoint. It was fun. I appreciated it, and I'm in awe of a lot of the design stuff that Isaac did in that game. It's just not really something I play that often, really.
I mean,
Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Oh, you go next. We'll give the Sadlers a break and give you.
I was just going to say that to me, Gloomhaven, Jason, is a game that I really wanted to like, so much so that I bought it twice, and traded it away both times. I'm going to use one of my kind of cliche phrases, but it really applies to that. It's a game that I appreciate more than I like. It felt like a chore to me. I would see it on my shelf, and it would almost, the physical weight of the box would almost be this weight on my shoulders of, okay, I should be playing this game. It's huge. It's taking up a lot of space. It wasn't cheap. It's clearly a labor of love. It clearly is an incredible design, but it just felt like a chore every time I would take it down and having to get all the stuff out and fiddling with all the tiles and all the tokens. And
yes,
it was just, it didn't fit my lifestyle. I'm not a guy who's going to leave a game on his table for 3 weeks. That's just not me.
And where's the dice, man? Where's the dice?
So yeah, Brady. That's actually one of my points. I have a few things I was going to touch on because Brady and I actually met up with Isaac at Purdue because he lives in West Lafayette, and we met up with him when he was doing his prototype before his first Kickstarter, and he kind of wanted to know if we wanted to do a scenario for it and help promote it. We tried it out, and instantly I thought it was a really fun system. I was like, oh, this is cool. I like it. But the final product came along, and I had a few little problems with it. One of them is the setup. Obviously, the setup is a little too much for me. I don't like standees mixed with my miniatures. I just would rather just be all miniatures.
You're Warhammer guys, of course.
Yeah. So obviously. Also, the modifier deck where it's like replaces dice. I don't like it at all because Brady and I have this philosophy about dice. We like dice that always do stuff, and this modifier deck is basically replicating dice. But there's even a card in there that's an X, that's a miss. And I hate that. It's like I hate drawing a card. It's like, oh, my attack does nothing. I hate that. Like that's my problem with Descent. It's a whole other discussion. But yeah, that's one thing we avoid is just that. Oh, nothing happened. I hate that.
Yeah, and I guess that's the only design criticism I would have is like I appreciate the people like that dice, the modifier or not dice, that modifier deck, the attack modifier deck, and how you can customize it and everything.
And it was cool. I do like that. The modifier is cool.
But it replaces dice. When in reality, you could just use dice and then have mechanics adapted to the dice to simulate what that's doing. It's just a design choice. It's a preference thing fully.
Plus,
but yeah,
we just like rolling dice. Yeah, I think my last reason is that we play less and less campaign games as we get older. But I think that one in particular is like it's a huge investment. It's a big campaign. It's kind of like goes on for a long time, and that's very unappealing to me these days. I like shorter campaigns where we can play this is done in 12 games or something.
Yeah,
like that.
and the small little superficial theme thing that gets to me too is like I don't want to retire my character and start a new character in the same game we're playing. It's like if we're playing a campaign, I want to be a character and I want to progress that character, and like when that character's done, the campaign's done. Like I don't want to play a new guy in the middle of the campaign.
But all that being said, it's a very popular game. Isaac deserves his success. Great job, Isaac. I mean, it's an awesome product. It just those are problems we had with it. So
yeah, and they're all personal preference. Yeah.
And so
I wish we had a little more to say about it, though.
A couple of things there. Number one, it was funny watching because I think you guys linked up with Isaac a very short while ago, right? And you posted on.
Yeah.
And
so we have him on Ultra Quest for some content for our Kickstarter. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, so it was funny because like it was right around then that I was asking you guys for your top 10, and none of you guys had Gloomhaven, and there you were pictured with Isaac right there. I wonder if he knows.
He threatened us. Do not put it on
your
list.
I don't think Street Masters is on his list. So
that's true. I know he's not a big randomness guy. I think he had to like get cajoled into even putting in the deck.
I will say though, to speak on Ultra Quest's behalf, I was actually very concerned about him trying out Ultra Quest because I know he didn't like dice, but he actually really enjoyed it. He really liked it a lot, and so that says a lot for it to me.
Mm-hmm.
That was encouraging.
This whole thing is just a backdoor Ultra Quest ad, so
yeah, it is. Yeah, so prepare yourselves.
And the next game that nobody had on their list that is going to make a couple of my listeners completely throw their whatever they're listening to against the wall. Nobody here put Mage Knight, my number 2, on the list.
Can I put that on my least favorite?
Oh my god, I can't believe
there's
you
a
guys.
funny thing about Mage Knight because honestly, like if I had gotten into the hobby a little bit later, I think that Mage Knight would have had a bigger impact. But because I had so much kind of established in what I wanted to do with design stuff, when Mage Knight came along, I really appreciated it, and it did have an impact on me because when I got it, I loved the solo stuff. I loved how deep it was, and I did play it a lot solo. But like after I kind of got, I don't know, a dozen or so plays in, I just every time I try to revisit it since then, it's like, nah, I got like halfway through setup, I'm like, nah, this isn't worth it, and it's something that I have no qualms about the design. Like it's obviously a brilliant design. I know why people like it, but I just feel like for me, I've moved way past that type of game where I put more value in ease of setup, elegance, and rules. I don't want to like read through a walkthrough.
I feel like Brady tried to get me to play that with him so many times, and I gave it so many shots, but I could never get into it. I never felt any theme of it whatsoever. It just felt
the Mage Knight theme. It's nothing. Like Mage Knight to me, like the theme is just like we have some random pieces of artwork. Let's put it in a box and make something out of it.
But I know people love it, and it's one of those things where I just can never get into it. And I tried many times, and I wanted to understand why people liked it. And I think we played through so many times.
Yeah, the thing about it too that is impactful is because one of my favorite things, and you can see that by the designs Adam and I put together. One of my favorite mechanics in games is having a deck that represents your character. So I do appreciate that about Mage Knight. That's what got me into it. That's why I liked it. But I think it's a deck builder that has way too many moving parts for my taste. So because you could get to the sweet spot a lot quicker by cutting some of that fat. But it was something that just kind of they just wanted to put everything they could into this thing, and you know it is what it is. People love it and it's great. I never want to play it again probably.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of, you know, a lot of more modern games are getting a rap of games used to be challenging based on the decision space that you had. You know, Knizia games could have a page full of rules, but they're still challenging because of the decision space.
Right.
I think Mage Knight is an example of a game that's challenging because of how obtuse it is, how fiddly it is, how many things you have to consider.
Right. Because a lot of those decisions are made from all these combinations of things that in the long run don't actually matter as much. It's because you get to the same conclusion, but there's so many decisions getting from point A to point B that you feel clever for getting there, even though you're kind of just stumbling through superficial decisions, you know?
Right. Yeah. I thought it was needlessly complex. But I'm with you. I'm a big person with elegance. I say that, and then at least one or two of the games that are on my list are absolutely inelegant. But that's okay. I'll contradict myself a lot.
Oh, I mean, you are Mr. Mike Dilisio's Solomode Games. I think a lot of people know you for Mr. Solo, the number one acclaimed 6 years in a row. Mage Knight is what is happening?
Mage Knight and Gloomhaven are both considered to be kind of, you know, I get it, but they're not for me.
I also think that Mage Knight, like, while a lot of games are like really highly rated because they're solo, because they play really well solo, I have this feeling, and this is a personal feeling, that Mage Knight is so highly rated solo because it's like the only game that only has ever played solo. Nobody wants to play that multiplayer. There's no way you're going to find anybody to sit down and play that multiplayer.
That is true.
That is true. When we played, I felt like we were both playing our own games. Like that's one of my problems I had with it. It didn't feel like any cooperation at all. So
yes, you are not cooperating unless you're like attacking a city or whatever, whatever's happening. So I don't care. Nuts to you guys. It is. I got my Ultimate Edition up there. Some friends gifted that for me as like a housewarming. Oh my god, I can't wait. I love it.
Here's how crazy I am though, because I knew I would never play this game again, but I had bought the Ultimate Edition and it's sitting. I'm looking at it on my shelf right now. Haven't touched it. I opened up and organized it. That's about it. I'll probably never play it, but I felt like I had to own it just because of, like, you know, this time I spent with it when it first came out, and I do appreciate it as a game. I just never want to play it again.
So I've given my piece about Mage Knight before. I think like the thing that I like about it the most is it's cascading. Like, you start so small, and you know most deck builders, they get more complex. That's what they give you, is that like kind of increased power to a big Nova turn at the end. I feel like in Mage Knight, that becomes, you're this little piddly adventurer and now you're sacking a city, and it takes like 4 hours, and you really got to earn it, because especially like kind of in the harder modes where you're defeating, like, you know, the big city and whatever it is, it just feels like the payoff. I've never played a game with so much payoff for all those decisions. And it's funny to hear you, Adam, saying that the decisions don't really matter. Then I don't know, man. I think they do.
That was me. Yeah.
You say Brady?
No, I didn't mean like the decisions didn't matter. I just meant the number of decisions you're making from like point A to point B are kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of it. Like, you are making good decisions, because I mean, I've played the game enough to know that like it's all decision based. It's not a luck fest at all. But at the same time, there's so many things you can do that can modify what you're doing that it almost doesn't even matter, because there's so many modifiers.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Brady, is that there's so many decisions that they feel obsolete because you made so many of them.
Yeah. It's kind of hard for me to describe in my head, like the thought process, but yeah, I'm not saying that decisions don't matter, because they definitely do, for sure.
That's what I mean by obtuse. You know, because in some games, you know clearly what's getting you to progress forward. I'm doing this, and this is going to lead to me doing this. In a game like Mage Knight, there's 55 steps to move one tile. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's the decision I made that got me there?
Right.
You know?
I love it.
and my only other thing I'll say about it too is, like, one of the biggest turnoffs for me is like very intricate exceptions, and like looking through the scenario guide for that game, there's just way too many little exceptions for every scenario. And I know that it's kind of it's for more experienced players who know how the game functions, but like layering those on top of like the normal decisions you're making, because the game is already complex enough. I just wish there was a more elegant way to do those scenarios, quote unquote, because there's a lot of them in there and adds a lot of different replayability, but I just feel like it's just too many exceptions,
You know, this would have been a lot quicker if I would have asked them why my games were on their list, because their answer probably would have been 90% of the time, I never heard of that game.
Well, I mean, thank you guys for explaining yourselves. We haven't even gotten to the top 10. We're already half hour in. It's amazing. All right, so let's get to the official top 10. So like I said before, all of us made a top 10, and these are the 10 games that made 2 people's lists. We actually did not have a game make 3 people's lists, and definitely not 4. So I was actually super surprised by that. So there's a lot of like variety and diversity in what you're about to hear. But the first one, Brady already mentioned, this was on Adam and Brady's list. It was Descent. So Descent, I'm assuming, is here for nostalgia / inspiration purposes.
Yeah, that was our first big like return to board gaming, because when we were in a fantasy metal band, and we always practiced for our shows. Then we'd go home and with our apartment, we'd play Descent with our band members, and that was kind of like our whole, when we were in our 20s, that was our whole life.
Well, even before that, though, like I remember going to the game store when Brady was buying, he was getting back into board. I think he bought Arkham Horror or something. Got into this Fantasy Flight Games company, and I was at the store with him, and I saw this big box with Descent, and I looked in the back, and it like kind of reminded me of Hero Quest that we played back in the day. I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to check this out, and I bought it. And that kind of got me into the company. And we played it quite a bit, like Brady said, and it actually led me to us both get a job at the company, and me actually getting to design the second edition of the game. So it's kind of huge in many levels in our lives. So.
Yeah, Mike, you're not a Descent guy, right? Like if all the things you said about some of the other games, I can't imagine that you would like Descent.
I've never even played it.
Oh,
truth in advertising. I have never even played it.
Not the second edition either, Mike?
I have not. No,
good, because it's terrible.
I mean, I would try it, but I have not played it.
Okay.
It's actually one of my least favorite formats in gaming. I cannot stand one versus many games. It's there for nostalgia. Got us into gaming. We played it a lot, but when I played it as the Overlord, I played it as a dungeon master. Like I kind of
when we
facilitated play.
When we left FFG and they announced the full co-op Descent app, and I thought back to that meeting Adam had where he was on the design committee, and he's like, I want to make Descent co-op. They're like, no, it's one versus many. It's a versus game. I was like, told you.
And the co-op probably like increased the sales 200% of that game.
I guarantee you though, like, because I don't think the co-op like works really well because there's a lot of the apps just doesn't work great.
No, it's like
clunky.
It's like 2 rules you have to learn, 2 rule sets. It's a nightmare. Yeah. I tried it. I wanted to get into it, but it's just way too much. That's why these newer FFG games that built with the app with the ground up are so much better.
I'm predicting. You guys probably have way more knowledge than I do, but I'm predicting Descent 3rd Edition coming at some point.
Oh, we've been predicting that for a while now. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean, it seems Descent 2nd Edition, that was back in 2012 when we released that, and when I was still at the company. I mean, that's like what, 8 years or 7 years ago.
Yeah, and it's still what top sellers. So that's why it's been it's got such a long shelf life. But I think it's due. Yeah, I think the new edition's probably due.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next tier choice over here is actually a choice for me and Brady. I have a feeling this is because of ease of play. This one is Hero Realms.
So, yeah, I think ease of play, but also I just love this. It has really flashy modern art, but it still feels like just kind of watered down. I mean, not in a bad way, but watered down generic fantasy that I appreciate. Kind of like a lot of the artwork reminds me of old novel covers, from fantasy novels. And
when you say watered down generic, I think you mean classic.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Classic fantasy.
like if I get watered down iced coffee, I appreciate it sometimes. You know, it's just it's easier on the
This is
stomach.
what I'm here for. I'm Brady's translator. He just
Yeah.
forgets to repeat for me to tell him what to say first.
No, but I mean, I do like the gameplay. It's quick, easy, but the campaign is great. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love how
Oh, yeah.
they have a little adventure book you go through, and it's just an awesome game.
I love how much they squeeze into the game. It's definitely like kind of a big little game. You know, there's so much more there than what the cards would say. Plus, I mean, there's a lot there, and I can really get into it. And like the leveling system is great for the characters, but I can also just play the regular game with like a noob. You know, someone who they understand, you know, color matching and everything. I really dig it. I really do.
Yeah.
I need to try this apparently because I've played Star Realms, or at least I tried. I fell asleep halfway through, and then when I woke up, I'm like, oh yeah, I liked this game better the first time when it was called Ascension. So I did not like Star Realms at all, but you're making Hero Realms sound pretty good actually.
They added a few things I liked. Like I have both. I mean, I definitely play Hero Realms more than Star Realms. I have like the big Frontiers box of Star Realms. I've only played it like once, but I play Hero Realms quite a bit. So it's got a little more to it than Star Realms, I think.
I need to give it a shot.
I think you might get into the like I mean, I know you don't play a ton of adventure games, but you know, like you know, you play City of Kings, and there's like when it answers for you, it's good. You know, like when it hits that bullseye. And I think Hero Realms, for as little as it is, and playing the co-op version, I think it and I love the fact that because they did Star Realms co-op, but it was like using the deck, and that's, you know, it's good, it's fine. But they made custom decks for all the villains. They made custom story decks. They really went out. It was really good. Speaking of little big games, so I put a pin in Mike's Tiny Epic Quest. Me and Brady also went with Tiny Epic Defenders.
Woo!
So we might have to have a brief Tiny Epic little discussion over here.
I think Defenders wins that one. I think. So.
I think Defenders like mostly it's a very light mechanical system. The only mechanics in that game is the turn deck. You know, that's pretty much the driving factor of that game, and it's very elegant and light, and there's not much to it. But the theme is great. It captures that kind of Defenders of the Realm, that Richard Lanius game, in a very tiny package, but it delivers the same feeling almost. But yeah, I think the reason Quest was kind of left out for me was it was a little too abstract. The theme was very pretty, but as far as like playing, it didn't feel like I was playing a quest per se, you know. It was more just a movement optimization, like positioning thing. But yeah, Defenders for me was fantastic.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll jump in and say I have nothing bad to say about Defenders. I honestly, all of the Tiny Epic games, Western is probably the one I need to play a little more to feel like to really have a good opinion on it one way or the other. But I've only played first edition Defenders. I have the second edition along with the Dark War expansion, but I haven't played it yet. So I'm fully open-minded to see it jump up the list. And I also concede to what Brady's saying with Quest. It's kind of abstract, quite honestly, but I don't know. I mean, for some reason that game just clicks with me. I like the two distinct phases. I like the fact that the first, you know, the kind of that day phase is a movement puzzle, a logistics puzzle, and then the second part of the round is a complete press your luck. And it's so weird because in some ways it feels disconnected, but in other ways it doesn't. It makes sense. That game just clicked for me the first time I played it, and I played it more probably than any of the Tiny Epic games.
Wow.
Yeah, because the solo was. I think the solo was the best because what does a solo player want? I think a solo player wants a puzzle, and if it's gussied up and, you know, like, give me all the bells and whistles, but deliver me a solid puzzle I think that's the best solo Tiny Epic puzzle. So
I agree.
So I definitely see. Yeah, again.
Although we've been playing some of now I haven't played the solo of the Tiny Epic Tactics, but Brady and I have played the multiplayer. Man, that is so good.
Okay.
Yeah, if that was out, that would replace Defenders probably for me. I'm pretty sure.
So
yeah, it looked pretty cool.
So before the call, Mike promised not to be that guy.
Oh yeah, but I didn't put it on the list.
Right. It was a side note. It was an asterisk.
I'm just playing with you. All right.
Have you guys heard about this game game Alter Quest?
Yeah, let's tidy up an Alter Quest. Yeah.
That would blow just about anything we talked about.
Speaking of, actually, let's go back a little bit. So Descent made both of your lists because of the nostalgia factor. So did, I'm assuming, so did this next game. This is also on Adam and Brady's list. It is Hero Quest.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I tried revisiting this game, and it was not fun. But I had to leave it up there just because, like, there's no way I'd be here today if I didn't have a love affair with Hero Quest when I was in middle school.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's just. It's a game, but obviously it's more than that. To when you're a kid, that kind of opened the door to all of this stuff. Yeah. But I mean, it's a product. It's a cool product. It's like this, fantasy adventure game, cool miniatures and furniture, and all this stuff. Quests you can play through. It was just mind blowing as a kid. So
and I know we joke about it too, but like literally, that this is why we were doing Alter Quest for our next big project, is because we've always had kind of a desire to do something with what we loved about Hero Quest, to kind of modernize it and do something somewhat similar in the modern market, because it's one of those things people always seem to call back to, like, oh yeah, I loved Hero Quest.
It's also because we want to play a game like that. Like we usually design our games by things that we don't have. Like, we designed Street Masters because we wanted to play a beat 'em up game, kind of like, we played Sentinels of the Multiverse. We wanted a game like that with miniatures where we could fight each other. I was like, let's do our own game. So we usually design our games from things we want, and that's just something we've always wanted to do. We have a chance to do it. But yeah, Hero Quest was the reason that's there.
Can I take a quick second to proselytize for a fixed board on the call? I'm totally serious.
Preach,
serious.
Mike,
One of the first things I told them after the first playtest was how much. I actually was afraid when we finished that first playtest. I'm like, okay, so is this actually going to be the board, or are you going to have a bunch of modular tiles? I'm like, no, it's going to be this. And because, look, I get that modular tiles have their place in a dungeon crawl. I mean, I get that it kind of thematically gives you this idea of, you're exploring something, you don't know what's ahead of you. But I don't think that that's the only way to do it. And I think that sometimes the upkeep and the fiddliness that's involved with it does not make up for what you're getting in immersion, because I'd argue that you're just as immersed, playing Alter Quest, at least, as a lot of modular, tile games that I've played, because of the way it's set up. It's still going to be modular, just in a different way.
I agree. And like, you see that Hero Quest board, and it's iconic. That's the game. So you see this piece of a game, and if I go back to look at Descent First Edition, as impactful that game was, I would see a pile of random tiles that wouldn't mean anything to me. It's like it just.
Yeah, I can't name what quest that is set up. There's there's an S shape, and there's like a U, and I have no idea what quest you're playing. But yeah, that's a good point, because it is a piece of artwork. It's just it's a table centerpiece, and it's like just something very iconic. Yeah,
it sparks your imagination, man. That's what it is. Like, it lets you build your own adventure.
Like, it's funny. Like, funny you mentioned that, because I remember playing a Hero Quest module when I was a kid. It was like some wizard's tower or something was going on, and I remember, like, what was it? The enemies couldn't open the door or something like that.
Sounds familiar.
Or something like that. So I remember, like I can look at a board and remember, okay, I remember when I locked the door on these enemies, and I remember when I ran away into that thing, and like the whole story kind of, like, now that you guys said that, like, because I have my Gloomhaven box, which, Mike was talking about, the big old Gloomhaven box. I'm not reminded of, like, Mission 56 or whatever it is.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a Mike Dilisio special. Outside this on my list as well. So I'm going to let you sing the praises for Dawn of Peacemakers.
All right, I'm going to keep this as quick as I can, because I know that we've been, going a little bit long. But this is a game.
We do our thing, man.
I have found the longer that I've been in the hobby, the more that I've found that I kind of gravitate towards games that are clearly labors of love. And to me, Dawn of Peacemakers is a labor of love. This is a game that is unlike any other game that I've ever played. It's it's so odd. I mean, it's fantasy because you're controlling these kind of anthropomorphic animals, right? And there are. It looks like a war game. You know, there's hex tiles, and you've got two different animal armies, and they're literally facing each other and going at it. But you're not playing either one of those armies. What you're doing is you're playing a character, and one of the reasons why I like it so much as a solo game is that you're playing one character. You don't have to, it scales really well, just like the things I appreciate with Adam and Brady's games. You're playing this one character, and your job is to get both sides to the brink of exhaustion, where they don't want to fight anymore. Neither side has destroyed the other side, but neither side has completely lost their motivation. They've just got to the point where they need to go back and regroup. And that's such an interesting idea. It's a campaign game that, will add, different mechanics and different things to each level of the campaign, but it's self-contained also. So, I mean, it's beautiful. The components are gorgeous. It's obviously been done with love. It's one person's vision, right? He did the art, he did the world building, he did all the writing. There's incredible, flavor throughout the rule book. I was supposed to go short. I didn't. I loved it.
Sounds awesome.
Well, I mean, imagine playing Root, and you're playing the Vagabond. So the Vagabond is just going through they're causing mischief, and they're going through the enemies and everything. But instead of actually, trying to just get loot and win, you're interacting with the other armies, and you're trying to kind of get them to get along by whittling them down. So I love that gameplay. It has some rough edges, but I think just just the ambition of it. I haven't played anything like it, so kind of I love games that they may not be the best, but I don't have anything like it. And honestly, I feel that's kind of what I feel about Street Masters. So Street Masters, we've talked about, some of the things, especially with scaling and everything, but I don't own anything like it. I don't own another Double Dragon game. I don't own, and integrate the dice and exploding dice and everything. So those games always get extra points for me, and Dawn of Peacemakers is definitely on that list. So yes, we've talked about it. So the next one is actually another one that is also on my list and Mike's list. I'm actually surprised this did not make your guys' list. Let me know if you've played it. Near and Far.
Oh yeah. Yes, I have. Yeah, I do really enjoy it, and I love the expansion for it.
Yes.
It's just stiff competition at this point. So yeah, I just haven't played it enough.
I think for me there was just two factors, and one is when I think of fantasy, that's not the first thing I think of for whatever reason. I enjoyed the game, but it just doesn't jump out as fantasy for me. And it's also when I was going about this list, it was more about influence and stuff like that.
Yes.
So yeah, this one I enjoy it. I have nothing bad to say about it.
I really, really love the expansion. They did a great job with the co-op mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. I didn't love the co-op mode. It felt like it kind of laid stuff on top of the basic thing, as opposed to kind of making exchanges. So I feel like I was playing kind of a crunchier game. If I'm gonna play it co-op, I'm gonna play it with my family or my girlfriend or something.
Right.
I don't have a girlfriend. I have a wife.
Right.
My wife would be really mad if I said. Let me not do that. But so I wanted to kind of be that little bit more family friendly kind of thing, as opposed to kind of something extra. But it is still good. And I mean, oh my god, the stories and the campaign, just please, it's way up. It's way high up on my list. Okay, so now we're gonna get to, you're gonna make some people jealous. Although by the time they hear this, this will be a couple of days before the Kickstarter releases. I think in May or June.
It is going to be this is the first time we've announced it, but by the time this airs, people will know it's May 28th. May 28th.
Yes, so we're releasing this in late May, so a lot of people have gotten to this table by now. But at this point, only a couple of people have. You guys have, and you guys are really enjoying it. So much so that it replaced games last minute on the list. It is Lord of the Rings Journeys.
Yes.
Oh man, it's so good. So
good.
This
one actually replaced the LCG for me. The LCG was on my list because it was the iconicness of the first co-op LCG was a big deal, and I love Lord of the Rings. But this one replaced it as far as gameplay wise. And I'll let Brady talk more about this one. But the only thing I have against it is one of the things that's the biggest part of the game is the app. I don't really want to play a game with an app. I would have if this game didn't have an app, it'd probably be at the top of my list, I think.
Yeah, it's weird because sorry, go ahead, Ed. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I won't have much. I'll let you go more after this, but like also I don't like the map tiles, but again we talked about that. They just don't immerse me at all. Like I wish they were more zoomed in and had more iconic art and stuff like that. They're just kind of bland, I think. But the gameplay I enjoyed thoroughly. I think it was really fun. I look forward to continuing our campaign. And I'm actually looking forward more to expansions to see what else they do with the game. But yeah, if it wasn't for the app, I think it would be way up there. The app is well done. They did a good job with it, but I just don't want to be clicking through an app when I play a board game. So.
Yeah, and I realized for some reason I was talking about the Kickstarter date for Ultra Quest when I said May 28th. I had that on the mind, obviously. But
yeah, I was wondering what he was building up to there.
Yeah, so I thought we were talking about something about. But yeah, I'm not like what you consider a diehard Lord of the Rings fan. I do like Tolkien. I like the movies. I like the books, and I love the LCG, obviously. But I think my liking of the IP doesn't have too much of a bearing on me being interested in this game because it's just a great fantasy adventure game. I love the deck system, which is funny because when I first saw this announced, I was like totally against it. Because first off, it has small cards. I hate small cards so much. It has the whole like flipping over cards from your deck to resolve skill tests. I hate that. I hate it. And the fact they took those two things and made me love the game.
I will agree with that too because I hate it too. Like what was that one game we played? Was it Rune Wars that did that? Like the old Rune Wars
did it. Yeah, like they did that with Runebound, also the new Runebound edition.
No offense, Corey. I know you're listening to Corey. Yeah, I never liked that. I was like, I want to roll some dice, man. But
I highly doubt Corey's listening to this.
I'll tell him to. I'll send him a tweet. But it's pretty impressive that they got me to enjoy it when I.
Yeah. But they take just because. Like Adam said too, the map tiles, I typically try to avoid any game that requires me to either set up a map ahead of time or reveal a map as I go when it comes to intricate maps. Like if it's a tile laying game where you're just flipping over little tiles, it's fine. But this game has very intricate maps that are oriented in certain ways. That really is a big turnoff for me. So the fact they took all these things I don't like and made something that I'm like in love with right now is really impressive. But at the same time, my big pet peeve, as I really still think those map tiles, for what they are, they don't serve as much purpose. And I love the battle maps. They're just two tiles put together, and you get just as much depth from those little encounters than you do with the big journey maps. That's my only real criticism with the game. But other than that, it's fantastic. I'm over the moon for it, and I can't wait for expansions.
Are you playing that, Mike, or you didn't get it yet?
I am not, but Brady has told me that he'd hook me up and we'd play a game.
Yeah, I'm playing that too, guys. Come on.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not trying to horn in on a campaign. I just want to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, we should definitely play soon.
I got it upstairs. I cannot wait. I can't wait.
It plays great. So I was literally just playing it before we started recording. I was finishing up my game with Legolas and Bilbo. So
okay, so you guys have demonstrated excellent taste so far. You have demonstrated that you guys kind of know what you're talking about, which is great. You're going to have to explain this one to me. I have no idea what is happening. You guys, this is both an Adam and Brady special. This is Defenders of the Realm. Ugh. Oh my God. What are you guys thinking?
Oh, this game is such a staple for my collection.
So before you can get into it, the first thing that makes me think of is when we were both working at FFG and we were in my tiny little apartment in Minnesota, and I didn't have anything. I moved in, and so Brady brought over Defenders of the Realm, and we played it like 4 times in a row until we beat this quest. But I think that for me, it is a nostalgia thing. It's very old school. Obviously, it's got an old school mentality. It's a Richard Lanius game. He's got an old school mentality on a lot of his designs. But it took the concept of pandemic and it mixed in rolling tons of dice and over the top fantasy adventure. It just got us playing it over and over again. So it's kind of a pretty important game at that time in our life playing it, and it also inspired us to do a lot of stuff in that vein. We want to do more games that followed that kind of path.
Like the game we designed with Richard Lanius called Defenders of Champion City, which is a superhero version of it. Watch, it's coming soon.
That was pretty cool being able to work with somebody who inspired us back, so many years ago. What was that, 8 years
that
ago.
game came out I think it was 2010 when it came out, or 2011 or something. But I have to kind of agree there. It's got this weird, inexplicable charm to me, because when I got it, it was kind of clunky. Because I got it at Gen Con. I was working at FFG, and I ran over during my break, and I picked it up. And at the hotel room that night, I was had it set up. It's a huge keyboard, but I had it set up on the little desk in the hotel room, trying to learn it and everything.
The rule book is not good.
It's rough to get through, but it had this weird charm, and it really had me keep coming back to it. It's a good puzzle, and I kept talking to Richard. It kind of started our relationship with Richard too. So after that came out, we were in touch on BGG. We started meeting up at conventions, and eventually we started working together with him. And
I think that might have something to do with it too. I think it's more of a personal connection too, because it introduced us to when I was working at FFG, Richard Lanis would come in to work on Arkham stuff every now and then. And the first time he was there, I introduced myself, and I was helping out with Elder Sign, a game he worked on. And ever since then, every time I saw him, he was always oh, it's my good old friend Richard. I knew him for years. He's just a really personable guy, and we've been staying in touch pretty frequently ever since then. So it's kind of that's how we met Richard. So.
I think, games is so long. Pandemic is supposed to be short, and having 2-hour Pandemic is outrageous. And then 2-hour Pandemic that comes down to a zero-sum dice roll.
I have not played Defenders of the Realm. I did play Defenders of the Last Stand a couple of times, which, from what I understand, is basically just an evolution of that.
It's basically Defenders of the Realm with a bunch of stuff piled on that I didn't really think was necessary. So.
Right. Yeah. No. I understand, and I'll just co-sign. I obviously don't know him as well as you do, but I'm not sure. Present company accepted. I'm not sure I've ever met a nicer guy than Richard Launius. I met him at a con, and he was just, there's no reason at all he should be nice to me.
He's a charmer, man. He is really, he's your best friend immediately.
Cool. So I'm always pulling for his stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Defenders of the Realm. That was number 3. I think I stopped at some point saying numbers. I should probably get back to that.
Number 3.
This is the top 10 list. Okay. So we have 2 games left. I'm pretty sure that, because one of the games with top 10 is let's guess along and everything. It's not Mage Knight and Gloomhaven, obviously. So these are a couple of games that, people may not have guessed, but they kind of hit home for especially a couple of you guys. So the number 2 is actually Mike's number 1 game, and I'm actually really surprised that it made it that far up. I haven't played it, so I don't know. Also on Adam's list, this is Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Mike, take it away.
So since it's higher on your list, Mike, I'll go first. It's actually number 10. It was number 10 on my list. It just made it. So it's a mirror image there. Not because I didn't like it, because that's one of the more recent games that are on my list, aside from Lord of the Rings, Journeys to Middle-earth, and that we played it recently. And one of the reasons why it's on here and stood out was because it's the first game that I ever played that was a 4X style game that I enjoyed. I usually don't enjoy 4X games because every time I'm doing something cool in the game, building up, somebody comes and messes with me and tries to fight me, and I am not into combat when I'm playing a 4X game. I just want to build up and research and all that stuff. But this game, Brady kept bugging me with his stupid goblins, and I was still, but I was still having fun. Combat was fun, and everything was so simple, and it just, the game clicked with all 4 of us playing, and it looked really cool on the table, and it was really the most fun I've had with a recent game that I remember playing the first time we played it.
That's saying something about combat, because people who have played games with me know that I'm super not aggressive. I'm very passive aggressive. I'm not aggressive at all. But the way the combat works in the game, I wanted to fight the entire game.
God, he would not. So good. He wouldn't leave me alone. My birds were up there, in their kingdom, just hanging by themselves, and the goblins just kept getting up there and annoying me like crazy. But
it's a blast.
It's a fun game. Made me enjoy 4X. Good job, Gameland Games.
Yeah, and I'm gonna parrot a lot of what you said, because it's almost frightening how much your thoughts are why I like the game. Number 1, the word fun is really, that should be the number 1 thing. This game, it's just fun. It really is. I also have no use for 4X games. I also don't particularly enjoy combat, especially direct combat. I don't like any of those things. I don't like long games. This game even though it's not short, it never feels long. It never drags. I have a smile on my face the whole time I'm playing it. You know what I mean? It's just, there's something just elegant and breezy about it, especially since there's like a boatload of text on your player boards. It should be a mess, and it's just not. It makes sense.
You invite me over to play it over at your buddy's house with Tom from Drinking Meeples, and like I got there and look at the board, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be miserable, man. Like I was always different effects and stuff, and once we started playing, I was like, oh, this is easy.
It all just makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny because Brady and I were playing it because we set up a game night to play it because we were like researching for a project we're working on. Another one of the super secret projects we can't talk about, but like I wanted to try to study this type of game, and I was not looking forward to it at all because I was looking, like same as Mike, I'm looking at my board and I'm like, there's all this stuff I have to read. But yeah, it's just, to me, the best way to explain this game is just a big fun game. Like it's just big, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I wish I lived in Indiana. I would love to. Although I'm living next to Gary Pope. This is Gary Pope's #1 game, so I might have to bug him.
Yeah.
Oh, man, you live next to Gary?
Oh yeah, my property values are like way down.
I am so sorry.
So we have reached our #1 game. This is on my list and on Adam's list. Pretty high up there is my #1 game. So this one is to remember. This is we did top 10 fantasy tabletop games. So this is not necessarily board games. We have very heavy board games, obviously, because we have designers on the show. But Dungeons and Dragons, just period. Dungeons and Dragons is our #1 influence. Adam, you put Dungeons and Dragons on there as your #3. Are you a D&D refugee as well as Warhammer?
Yes, D&D actually. I went to Warhammer first, and then when I was at the game store looking at Warhammer books, I went over to I moseyed on over to the Army books, and they were next to the role playing books. I started looking at D&D when I was about 16 years old, and I got the handbook, and I just read it for years before I even played it. Like I would just read it for fun all the time. But yeah, when I started playing D&D, it kind of opened the door to all kinds of new types of gaming and influences, and it's just a pretty iconic thing in my life, and it played a big part in Brady's life too. I don't know why it's not on his list.
I'm bitter. I'm a bitter D&D refugee because D&D got me into writing, and I wrote a fantasy novel, and it sucked. And I'm a failed novelist, so I'm bitter about it. But no, I do like, I mostly GM'd and stuff, and I did appreciate D&D because I just wanted to tell stories. And the reason I don't think about it as like a game so much is I never got into the mechanics too much. I just let Adam handle that stuff. I just wrote stories and guided people through stuff. And
it was pretty big deal in my life.
But I've always been much more of a components guy, so I've always drifted more toward board games. But I think D&D in general, as like an overall influence outside of board games, is still very impactful in my life for sure.
Any board games in your life there, Mike?
Board games in my life?
Oh my God! It's an hour long.
There's a few.
There's more than a couple board games in Mike's life. Just look at any of his videos. That wall is banging. I meant D&D.
Yeah, no, I've played D&D, a number of times. It's not ever been my first love, but I appreciate it. And I honestly think if you are into gaming at all, I would even include video games on this, modern gaming, period. And you don't acknowledge the massive, groundbreaking influence of D&D, then you're being delusional. I mean, it's kind of the foundation of anything fantasy based within the last 30, 40 years. And so my only thing is that I'm just not a terrific role player. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but I enjoy it. I mean, it's just not something I'm ever going to choose over a tabletop game, but I definitely understand it and appreciate it.
All right. So that was, between all of that, we had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of, answered a lot of questions about Brady and Adam's opinions on some games. But most importantly, I think for their perspective, because of where we're at with the Kickstarter and everything, you got a sense of their influences for the Altar Quest, which is, I almost put it #1 just to, make you guys happy. But
if we could have added it, it would have been way up there. I do adore that game.
It would be my #1 for sure, yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to record a whole separate podcast. We're releasing that in a couple of days. And that will bring you guys to preparation. So like it'll probably release on the Monday. You guys are releasing what, on a Tuesday, right? The Kickstarter? That's the thing, releasing on Tuesdays?
Yep.
Yeah, so
28th, yep.
So we'll probably get that up to the day before. So we are going to move the preview of the Altar Quest over to there. But this was top 10, top a lot. The top 10 fantasy tabletop adventures. Mike Dilisio, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. It was great.
And the Sadlers, you guys are going to be right back with a preview. But thank you so much for sharing your influences and lots of laughs, all that good stuff.
Thanks. I always appreciate you having us back, even every time we come and crash this place.
Yeah, even though I have to bring Brady with me, it's always fun.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you very much to the Sadlers. Thank you to Mike. I've been wanting to have Mike on the show for a regular spot ever since he debuted on the Dice Tower with Solomode Games. I figured, that'd be a easy fit in, to some of the games that we're talking about, and glad we were able to make that happen. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope that you are vibing with what I'm trying to do with the designer interviews that are coming on the show. You can get designer interviews at a lot of places. Whenever a designer hops on, I'd like to give them a chance to kind of offer something a little bit different. Criticizing Mage Knight and Gloomhaven are definitely not things that you're going to get in a lot of podcasts, especially with that depth with the eye of a designer. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. If you wanted to learn more about Altar Quest, we are releasing this episode on the Friday. Monday will be our preview. There are a lot of previews out there. Brady and Adam hustling, trying to get the word out about their stuff as usual. You can hop over to Solo BG, which is another podcast. I imagine Solosaurus is going to have a spot with them. Maybe not. I'm not really sure. I know the One Stop Co-op Shop guys did their preview about a month ago. So there is no lack of Adam and Brady on the airwaves. So it was especially important for me to do a little bit something different. But we're going to, pay some bills and so to speak, and do the preview. So that will drop on Monday. The Kickstarter project for Altar Quest will drop that Tuesday, which will be the next day after the preview. If you want to reach out to us, ENGN_podcast on the Twitter, Every Night is Game Night Facebook group, everynightisgamenight.com, the sister to BoardGamersAnonymous.com. If you are so inclined, please give us a rating, 5 stars or how many stars you think we deserve, over on the iTunes store. That is about it. Next week, we are back with another episode. It just keeps on rolling, ladies and gentlemen. So until then, go ahead and grab a game off of that shelf, and let's make every night a game night.